This is VK6ARN, Newswest. We are a community organisation and we've been serving up the best amateur radio news in Australia since 1931. Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to Newswest for the 27th of August 2023. Now on with the show.
Hello, this is Dennis, VK6AKR from the WA VHF Group. An RTTY sked on 2 metres has been inaugurated for the Perth metro area at least. We intend to continue on Wednesday evenings from 1200 UTC for about 30 minutes depending on the level of interest. The aim is to encourage RTTY operation and familiarisation so that we can use it as a mode in contests as well as for general ragtune. It is also an excuse to warm up the 2 metre band, hi. The VK6 contest calling frequency for RTTY 2 metre band is 144.350, 144.350, and use lower sideband. Vertical antenna polarisation, a pogo stick is just fine. Advertising for the sked took place through WA Hams and the WA VHF Group mailing list. Most of us are using MMTTY, although FLDigi and inbuilt rig capability featured in the mix too. It was found that under low signal conditions, FLDigi sometimes had decoding problems. The rig which had inbuilt RTTY capability did a better job of decoding. One very experienced operator may use an actual mechanical teleprinter, a Model 15, next time with his bespoke RTTY decoder. If you're interested in taking part, we aim to be on air again next Wednesday the 30th, starting at 1200 UTC. Now, I'm no guru, far from it, but I'm happy to field queries about software configuration, etc., so contact me on vk6akr@wia.org.au. At least 50% of the journey to successful RTTY is in the setup. What about HF? Well, the choice of the 2 metre band was motivated by what I am calling the suburban block syndrome. Spaces too small for decent HF antennas. If you've solved that problem, then we'd encourage you to start your own RTTY sked and let others know about it so that we can share ideas, operational hints and so forth. And since ours is simplex on VHF, if our net does not reach your area, consider starting your own sked. Use in contests, logging, protocols for net control, portable operation, having an open day for the ones who would like to see what it's all about. These are some of the things we could explore. Let's explore and expand on RTTY operation. Thanks for listening. This is Dennis, VK6, AKR for the WA VHF Group.
Did you go to Perth Tech in 2022? If you did, and you liked it, please tell your amateur radio friends so that they don't miss out. If you didn't or couldn't go to Perth Tech in 2022, don't miss out again this year. There's a good lineup of presenters again, and next week I'll start talking about the presenters to whet your appetite. But as a teaser, I can tell you now that you'll hear of the latest developments, a new generation of software-defined radios. And this will be live, on-site, straight from the horse's mouth. Many of you will have guessed who the horse may be, but I'm leaving the full story to next week. Your task now is to commit to attending Perth Tech. We had about 70 attendees in 2022, and we can accommodate more, so don't miss out. A final decision has yet to be made, however. We may have to charge more for the catering this year. Food costs have risen sharply. We're working on it. The venue is fantastic, lots of room to do the things amateurs like to do, including slinging up antennas. The function centre is modern and air-conditioned. Those of you who can may bring your caravan or camper and stay on site for the weekend. That's better still, yes? The venue is the Gidgegunnup Recreation Club, about 20 kilometres up 2J Road from Roe Highway in Midland. It's closer than you think. There's no public transport, so those relying on public transport will need to phone a friend. Registrations for Perth Tech open on Friday the 1st of September at trybooking.com. The link will be posted in the usual places by the end of the week. That's shorthand for I haven't set it up yet. To recap, set the date in your calendar, Saturday the 28th of October, with the option of coming Friday and leaving Sunday. Get online and book your place at Perth Tech. The links will be on the VK6.net website from Friday. and on the WA Hams email list and on the Amateur Radio WA Facebook page.
Hi, I'm Steve, VK6SJ, with this week's episode of Did You Know? Firstly, apologies for taking a month off this. I hope you all got something out of the reruns of some past articles. Had a few things happening with me over the past month or so, and also had a serious case of writer's block. Anyway, back on the bike, and here we go. As a diehard HF aficionado, I've always looked at the digital voice modes with a little bit of amusement, then thought, wonder if 10 metres is open, and moved on. Having volunteered, though, to be the WIA advisor for P25 and the technical committee, though, has led me to think a little harder on the relevance of P25 technology within amateur radio. I thought I'd talk about some thoughts I have on this today. What is P25? P25 is a digital voice and data mode that's the technology of choice for most public safety agencies in both Australia and the United States. It's based on C4FM, or continuous 4-frequency modulation transmission, which allows for a maximum of 9.6 kilobits data throughput on a 12.5 kHz channel. P25 protocol is similar in functionality to most other digital voice protocols such as DMR, NXDN, Tetra, etc. Features include automatic ID, send and receive, position information, data transmission, individual and group calling, dynamic group number assignment, and so on. The technology allows for both conventional and trunking operation and can operate in a voting or simulcast architecture. Due to a few reasons I will not go into in this forum, P25 does tend to be quite expensive compared to, say, Yaesu's Fusion products or DMR or NXDN. It's quite feature-rich though, and as I mentioned before, its major adopter is the public safety sector. The fact that Australian agencies have been using P25 since the early 2000s means that most agencies have had at least one major refresh in that time, allowing a lot of radios and repeaters to enter the amateur market for experimentation. The fact that P25 is not hugely popular outside of the public safety sector also means there isn't much demand for the second-hand P25 equipment other than in the amateur market, making the initial cost of a P25 transceiver irrelevant, as these radios are often just discarded rather than sold, or at best sold in the auction market, often for literally pennies. Now, my initial thoughts on any of these digital modes, as in the past, has been more around the lack of technical challenge. Once you've programmed a couple of radios talking to each other on P25, what next? Yawn. Well, indeed, what is next? Currently, you can connect any digital mode repeater or base station to an all-star node and then cause the repeater to connect to another repeater or network, maybe another talk group. That's all good, but once you've mastered the programming of your radio, for me anyway, it starts to get a little less interesting. What would be more fun would be to be setting up the node or even a small network of repeaters. That got me to thinking about an earlier episode where I flagged the start of a discussion where we might make a series of repeaters available to emergency service organisations as a standby network. It also reminded me of the simulcast 2-metre network I used when I was working in Los Angeles. That was a repurposed complete legacy network from the local police. That in turn made me wonder if we couldn't do something similar here. Imagine if we took delivery of a complete P25 first-generation trunking network and portable and mobile radios, moved it to alternate sites and set it up on 70 centimetres. If we then provide a level of access to public safety agencies so that the network could be seconded to the agencies if their new network went down during a major emergency, either as a redundancy option or to extend the capacity. If looked at this from the perspective of an agency, they gift the network to a non-commercial entity such as a ham club rather than putting an axe through it. This costs nothing. That network is then set up in alternative locations that are not funded by the agency. Hams maintain and support this repurposed network. The network is connected to the agency networks in a way that's only used during exercises or in a major catastrophic event. The agency gets a free alternate network maintained by volunteers, almost like a reserve defence unit. We get the benefit of the last generation technology and get to learn on a system that is not permanently mission critical. To me, this sounds like a win-win situation. Obviously, there needs to be a high level of healthy interaction between public safety agencies and the ham community. I'd said this would be best managed by members of the ham community who also work in this sector, and there are a few of them in our community here in Perth. If other cities around Australia did the same thing, we could end up with a countrywide trunked radio network with a high level of functionality. Younger hams coming into the hobby might whet their appetite on the maintenance of one of these reserve networks and end up entering the commercial side of the radio industry, something that sector needs badly, as does ours. The functionality afforded by a network like this would be very useful to our ham community. Clubs could have their own talk groups, plus talk groups that span the whole city, state or the nation. Multiple groups could use the network at the same time instead of only one at a time like we have on the All-Star network, for instance. Food for thought, eh? If you happen to work or have worked in the public safety comms sector, why not team up with a few others in the same boat and start the conversation? Be interesting to see where it goes, eh? Well, thanks for listening. This has been Steve, VK6SJ, with another episode of Did You Know?
This is Newswest from VK6ARN, produced by amateurs for amateurs, purely about the hobby of amateur communication and experimentation.
As you may already know, or are just about to discover, Perth Tech is provided to WA amateurs at a ridiculously low cost. In fact, last year you paid less than the cost of catering. How do we do it? How do we provide a better than industry class day of interesting and useful presentations for such a low cost? Well, there are two ways we raise the funds. One is to invite amateur radio clubs and individuals to contribute, either a cash donation or something for the day raffle. In 2022, we had close to $2,000 in prizes on offer in the day raffle. The other is the main Perth Tech raffle, this year with 3 transceivers as the main prizes. Tickets are $5, and the more tickets you purchase, the more we can spend on Perth Tech, and the less we have to charge you. But please don't hang around. Our raffle has a compressed timeline this year, as we stood back and waited so that we wouldn't compete against the Northern Corridor Radio Group's Hamfest raffle, which, due to a cock-up by the venue owners, was a couple of weeks late this year. We've long held the view that it's far more fun to buy raffle tickets with a chance of winning something than to buy entry tickets to Perth Tech. For those who like numbers, Perth Tech 2022 cost just over $80 a head to present. Those who attended paid $20. If you can find a better value for money, I'd like to hear from you. Back to the raffle. Ticket sales are online and sales open on Friday the 1st of September. That's this coming Friday. We'll advertise the link on our website, vk6.net, and on Facebook and on the WA Hams email list. If you're one of those people who can't or won't buy stuff online, find a friend. Give them the cash so that they can help you out. Maybe clubs can help members on club days. There are ways if you want to do it. There are no paper tickets. Back to the raffle. The first prize is a Xiegu X6100 SDR portable radio. It's a bit like the ICOM 705 but better. It's valued at a postage stamp under $1,000. The second prize is an ICOM IC273A dual band, dual watch, UHF VHF portable transceiver. And third prize is a Yaesu FTM 3100R 2-metre mobile transceiver. Full details are on the vk6.net website. That's vk6.net. Everything's on there, don't forget it. Facebook page.
Hello everyone, this is Clive, VK6 Charlie Sierra Whiskey. Your participation is requested in an experimental transmission on 10 metres on Monday, September the 4th. As most of you know, the RAOTC Bulletin is broadcast on the first Monday of each month except January. The next transmission is scheduled for Monday, September the 4th. Of late, conditions on the higher HF frequencies have been pretty good. Mike, VK8MA, has had good results beaming the monthly RAOTC bulletin to the Eastern States listeners on 28.450 MHz from his QTH in Catherine in the Northern Territory, and would like to try beaming these 10-metre signals to us in Western Australia. On the afternoon of Monday, September the 4th, Mike proposes to transmit to WA on 28.450 MHz at 2 p.m. local time, and he asks that everyone in WA who can to please listen out for this transmission and to join in the callbacks afterwards. Depending on the success of this experiment, Mike may consider transmitting the RAOTC bulletin to WA on 10 metres on a regular basis while conditions remain suitable. So once again, all who can, RAOTC members and non-members alike, are asked to join in and support Mike VK8MA by listening for this 28.45 MHz transmission on Monday, September the 4th at 2 p.m. local WA time, and joining in the callbacks afterwards with detailed reception reports. Please give it a go. 7-3 from Clive, VK6CSW.
Hello, this is Chris, VK3QB, with news of the upcoming CW Open contest, which is on next weekend. This is a great contest, and it's on the 2nd of September 2023. If you have ever operated in the CW Open before, then you know it is comprised of 3 individual sessions, each 4 hours long. These sessions are all on September the 2nd and spread across the 24-hour period. Regardless of the ITU region you are in, the timing of at least one of these sessions should work for you. Operating in all 3 is even more fun. If you have ever participated in the CW Open, here is your chance to have some global fun. You don't need to be a CW Ops member to participate. Here is the schedule for the 3 sessions. Session 1, the 2nd of September, 00 to 0359 UTC. Session 2, 2nd of September, 1200 to 1559 UTC. And Session 3, 2nd of September, 2000 to 2359 UTC. To learn more and read the rules, please visit cwops.org and follow the links. Good luck in the contest. 7-3 from Chris, VK3QB.
Good morning, this is Roy, VK6XV, with this week's helpline, 27th of August 2023. Today we have from Barry, there still has 3 items available, a Hallicrafters Hotel Tango 33 linear amplifier for HF, $350 is all he's asking, and there's a Daiwa controller and rotator, $350 for that one also, and a vacuum tune voltmeter to test it all, $50 for that. Please contact Barry, VK6 Alpha Delta India, on his mobile 0428 959 771, 0428 959 771, or bravo.juliet.burns, that's Bravo Uniform Romeo November Sierra at bigpond.com, bravo.juliet.burns at bigpond.com. That's all the new items I have for this week. If you have any items for next week, please contact me. VK6X-Ray Victor. No, that one's a bit wonky at the moment. Try roy.watkins at bigpond.com. Romeo Oscar Yankee.watkins at bigpond.com. So thank you once again. Cheers now, 7-3.
Since 1931, Newswest has provided amateur radio news for Western Australia and beyond. This is VK6ARN.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. At a recent local hamfest, we set up a table to measure second and third harmonic emissions from any handheld radio that came our way. The process was fun, and we learnt lots, and in due course we plan to publish a report on our findings. When we received a handheld, we would disconnect the antenna and replace it with a short length of coax and connect it to a spectrum analyzer. We would then trigger the push-to-talk or PTT button and measure several things. We'd record the actual frequency and how many watts that the transmitter was producing, and then record the power level in dBm for the base frequency, double that frequency, and triple that frequency. In other words, we'd record the base, second, and third harmonics. This resulted in a list of numbers. Frequency and power in watts are obvious, but the 3 dBm numbers caused confusion for many visitors. The most perplexing appeared to be that we were producing negative dBm numbers, and truth be told, some positive ones as well. We'll get to those in our report. How can you have negative power, you ask? As I've discussed before, a negative dBm number isn't a negative value of power. It's a fraction. So, minus 30 dBm represents 0.000001 watts. And you'd have to admit that minus 30 dBm rolls off the tongue just a little easier. What we measured and logged was the overall transmitter output and at specific frequencies. As I've discussed previously, if you transmit using any transceiver, you'll produce power at the intended frequency, but there will also be unintended or unwanted transmissions, known as spurious emissions. The International Telecommunications Union, or ITU, has standards for such emissions. In Australia, the regulator, the ACMA, uses the ITU standard for radio amateurs. But I should point out that this might not be the case where you are. It's entirely possible, and given human diversity, probable even, that there are places where there are more stringent requirements, so bear that in mind. I'll state the standard and then explain. For frequencies greater than 30 MHz, the spurious emission must not exceed the lesser of 43 plus 10 times the logarithmic power, or 70 dB. That might sound like gobbledygook, so let's explore. First thing to notice is that this is for transmissions where the transmitter is tuned to a frequency greater than 30 MHz. There's a separate rule for frequencies less than 30 MHz, and the ITU also specifies a range of different limits for special purpose transmitters like broadcast radio and television, space services and others. Second thing is that the spurious emissions are calculated based on total mean output power. This means that your spurious emissions are considered in relation to how much power you're using to transmit, and it implies that for some transmitters you can be in compliance at one power level but not at another, so keep that in mind. The phrase "the lesser of" means that from a compliance perspective there's a point at which power levels no longer determine how much attenuation of spurious emissions is required. You can calculate that point. It's where our formula hits 70 dB, and that is at 500 watts. In other words, to meet the ITU standard, if you're transmitting with less than 500 watts, you're subject to the formula, and if you're transmitting with more than 500 watts, you're required to meet the 70 dB standard. It means that, at least in Australia, spurious emissions for amateurs are dependent on transmitter power because the maximum permitted power is currently 400 watts for an amateur holding a so-called advanced license. Now, I'll also point out explicitly that the emission standards that the ITU specifies are for generic radio equipment, which includes amateur radio, but also includes anything else with a transmitter. One thing to mention is that spurious emissions aren't limited to the second and third harmonics that we measured. In fact, they're not even limited to harmonics. If you're using a particular mode, then anything that's transmitted outside the bandwidth of that mode is considered a spurious emission, and there are standards for that as well. As an aside, it was interesting to me that in many cases amateur radio is treated separately from other radio services, but the ITU considers our community just one of several spectrum users, and it's good to remember that the entire universe is playing in the same sandbox, even if only some of it is regulated by the ITU and your local regulator. So let's imagine that you have a handheld radio that has a total mean power output of 5 watts. When you calculate using the formula, you end up at 50 dB attenuation. In other words, the spurious emissions may not exceed minus 13 dBm. So if your radio measures minus 20 dBm on the second harmonic, it's compliant for that harmonic. But if it measures minus 10 dBm, it's not. I should also point out that this is for each spurious emission. About half the radios we tested had a second harmonic that was worse than the third harmonic. So what does this mean for your radio? I'd recommend that you start reading and measuring. You'll need to measure the total mean power and the signal strength at the base frequency and the second and third harmonic. I will mention that surprises might happen. For example, the Yaesu FT857D radio I use every week to host a net appears to be transmitting with a power level that doesn't match its setting. At 5 watts, it's only transmitting just over 2 watts into the antenna. But at the 10 watt setting, it's pretty much 10 watts. You also don't need a fancy tool like we were using. All these measurements are relative to each other, and you could even use a $20 RTL SDR USB dongle. But before you start transmitting into its antenna port, make sure that you have enough attenuation connected between the transmitter and your dongle. Otherwise, you'll quickly discover the escape velocity of the magic smoke inside. I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima Alpha Bravo.
Hi there, I'm Clinton VK6FCRC, and I'd like to thank our Newswest team of volunteers and broadcasters each week, and those regularly submitting content each week. I'd also like to thank our readers and you for listening. Please stand by now for callbacks after the ident, or if nobody is taking callbacks, please fill out the form on the vk6.net website so we know how many people are listening or reading Newswest each week.